Welcome everyone. I am Yolonda Tonette Sanders and I am moderating today's panel, Living Your Best Life. So I have four authors here with me. Diana Bosse, author of The Perks of Having Cancer, an inspirational, positive, and humorous view of a not so inspirational, positive, or humorous situation. We have Paya Fitzgerald, Wow, I Can Lose Weight, Essential Tools for a Lifestyle of Wellness. And then we have Conlee Ricketts, 26 Days to Practice Peace. And then Nita Sweeney, Depression Hates a Moving Target, How Running with My Dog Brought Me Back from the Brink. So welcome everyone. I am honored to be here moderating your panel.
Thank you.
The first thing that I would like is, let's just do a few housekeeping things. Everyone in the audience, please, if you have questions, please put them either in the Q&A or the chat. I will monitor both and make sure that we can get your questions to these wonderful authors. I have a few questions I'll start with just to kick us off, and then, hopefully we'll have some questions from the audience. And if we don't, I can think of a lot of questions. I wrote some down, looked up all your books, so if nothing else, we will have a good time for the next 58 minutes. So the very first thing that I would like each of you to do is maybe take about 2 to 3 minutes and introduce yourself and your books to the audience. So we'll just go in alphabetical order and we'll start with Diana.
I'm Diana Bosse. I'm from Loveland, Ohio. I've always wanted to be a writer, and unfortunately in April of 2019, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. I took that opportunity to start posting daily perks of having cancer on Facebook to kind of motivate myself, and ended up taking those and writing a book because people kept saying, you should write a book. And I thought, I've written 3 or 4 books. I just never published anything, but nothing gets you off the couch faster than a brush with death.
Thank you. Paya?
Hello, everyone. I am Paya Fitzgerald, and this is my well-used personal book, Wow, I Can Lose Weight. And this book is not necessarily a book about my experience. It's more of a tool to help, an interactive tool to help folks look at what it means to lose not only physical weight, but the mental and emotional weight as well, which is really what got you in the weight gain in the first place in most cases. So yeah, that's what this is, just an interactive tool to help you. I give practical things, but the meat of it is this part of it. So wow, I can lose weight. And it's called that because I want you to speak out to yourself. Wow, I can lose weight. So there you go.
Wow, you look terrific.
Oh, thank you.
And we have Conlee.
Hi there, I am Conlee Ricketts, and this is also, I'll mirror Paya with the well-used version of the book. 26 Days is really a companion to keep you company for about a month, and has daily prompts, essays, checklists, kind of inspiration to keep you focused and kind of give your mind something to chew on for a day. I have a very overactive mind and imagination, and so this book walks you through 26 days alphabetically, A to Z, and keeps your mind busy for 24 hours and helps you dig out the things that you're already great at and the things that could maybe motivate you towards some more personal growth, things to work on.
Thank you. And then Nita.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nita Sweeney, and I am the author of Depression Hates a Moving Target. I wore the first copy out, and so we only have 3 tags on this one. But yeah, it's been lovely. I too have Diana referred to other books that have not been published. I've got about, I think I counted 11 in the drawer or something like that. So we'll see. I've been writing a long time. I'm also the editor of Right Now Columbus, which is a monthly email newsletter. But this book is a running and mental health memoir. It is my journey of going from a grief-stricken, overweight, chronically depressed couch potato to a marathoner. And I had a year where so many people died, I had to go back and like get the records. And after that, a friend of mine started running, and it was one of those, if she can do it, I can do it kind of things. And that's where it started. And at first I thought I was writing a book about a middle-aged woman getting athletic. And eventually through editing, I realized I was writing a book about a woman trying to save her life. And so it's mostly memoir. In the back, there is a section of resources. It's called Conclusions and Resources, that are just like little snippets of, call it advice if you want to. It's, it's my experience. And so, yeah, memoir, slightly self-helpish. That's Depression Eats Moving Target. Thanks.
Well, thank you all. I want to start digging a little deeper into the inspiration behind your works. And I know you all have hit the surface of that with the introductions, you know, being diagnosed with cancer, depression, things like that. But I really would like to know, what was that factor that really motivated you to start writing? Because we hear people all the time say, oh, I want to write a book, or, you know, I mean, you know, as they say, if I had a penny for every time I've heard someone say that, like, I would likely have $1 billion right now. So there's a difference between, you know, when people get that thought and they say it, but you all actually got the thought and did it. So what was the catalyst that really propelled you forward? And anyone can speak at any time. We don't necessarily have to go in alphabetical order unless you just like order and want to, and we can.
Well, I'll go.
Or go ahead,
Okay.
Paya.
So for me, writing this book was an easier way for me to compile what I'm giving out to clients in the first place. And so that was like the practical reason, like, let me get this in one little place so that here's your book and now we can do your program. The book was being written over a long period of time. And what actually, why the book is, I guess, personal, my own personal connection is that I've always been in wellness, even before we started calling it that. I was always a fitness professional, but I was a gaining weight fitness professional. And I was also, while I was doing that, I was a full-time teacher, wife, and mother. And so it was hard for me, like, okay, like, I get the exercise part, but what's going on over here that I'm getting older, I'm gaining weight, what's going on? And what happened was I realized that working 60 hours a week is not cute. It does not serve your body well. And striving to achieve whatever I thought I was trying to achieve in my career does not serve you well, because I don't even remember half of the accolades I got back in the past when I was doing all of that stuff. And so the weight gain just kept going. And I got to the point where, for me, I looked and I saw that I was almost 200 pounds. And for me, and especially then, I was like, oh, I cannot do 200 pounds. And so it was like, and then getting sick, I mean, stupid ailments. I mean, vertigo, because I would not go to the doctors to take care of an ear infection for like 8 months because I was working 60 hours a week. That's just nonsense and foolishness. So, say all that to say, I know women, I know people, we're struggling. We don't even understand that the toll stress takes on our body and how it manifests itself physically. And then at the end of the day, when you look at why you're even stressed, it's just not even that serious. So that's my long answer to how this book came about. Because I want you to lose weight while losing weight. So there you go.
I like that. Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
I could have used your book in 2017 because I had heard when I got married, a woman gains a pound a year for every year she was married. And one day I got on the scale and thought, I've not been married 36 years yet. Maybe it's time to lose a little weight. And so I did. And then I ended up getting cancer. I didn't even have to go through all that stuff. Cancer took care of the rest of the weight.
See, that's what you said, the beauty in your experience. Yeah, yeah. I've never heard about the weight gain thing with the spouse. But I can see that. I love them, but I can see that.
Anyway,
Well,
did I go next?
Oh.
About my book? All right. So anyways, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I probably at that point in time could have used Nita's book for a couple of days because I went to a black hole. Nobody expects a doctor to come in the room and say, I'm sorry, but the PET scan indicates the swollen lymph nodes in your stomach indicate you have cancer. And I thought, wow, I was blown away. So I laid on the couch and felt sorry for myself. I wasn't feeling well. I was so weak, I couldn't even stand up to brush my teeth. I was terrified of chemo because you hear all the horror stories. And I thought, if I feel this bad now, what's going to happen when I start treatment? I might not make it. And then I remembered about 23 years earlier, I had a dear friend, Mark, who had lymphoma. And he's still here to this day. And he attributed a lot of his recovery to being positive. So I thought, I need to take the Mark Bassler approach and I need to make myself accountable. So I got on Facebook and started making my business everybody else's business. And I started posting just silly stuff that happens to you. It's not just losing your hair. There's a lot of stuff that happens to you. And I shared it all every morning on Facebook. And then people started responding to me. They were saying, you know, my sister in Michigan has cancer. I've asked her to follow you. You know, I don't have cancer, but I get up at 6 a.m. every day. And it's the first thing I do is look to see what you've said. And then somebody made the mistake of telling me that I reminded them of Irma Bombeck. And that's all I needed to hear. I'm like, I'm going to write a book. And so I did.
And Conlee?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of letting your life inspire you. All of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I've always been a journal keeper and curious. And I had read, Dr. Seuss's A to Z book, big A, little a, what begins with A. I'd memorized it, and I think the alphabet was in my mind. And I one day sat down and was like, I wonder if I have my own personal alphabet, words I live by. And I just listed A to Z, and I found a word for each letter, and I was like, huh. And then I just tucked that aside. And there was a blogging challenge, an A to Z blogging challenge. And I was like, oh, I could do that. I already have my A to Z. So I was like, okay, I'll just start writing now so that I have something. And then more years passed, and I was looking at my life, all the ups and the downs and the things that I have accomplished. And I was like, I could put this into a book, because the way my life has been, I have learned that I can tolerate just about anything for 24 hours, even good and bad stuff. This is when I need Paya's book and Diana's book and Nita's book, because the January of this year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was this, you're like, whoa. But if I can wait for a phone call for 24 hours, then I can certainly pin my mind on these concepts. So I did, I pulled out my book again, and I just tried to go through my alphabet and keep my mind busy and work and grow. So the inspiration was really just, let your life inspire you to improve, celebrate your wins, figure out what you need to fix, take action.
That is awesome. And then Nita, did you want to comment?
Sure. I'm sort of taking it all in because these, I have to read all your books. These are so inspiring. I mentioned a little bit about how my book came about. I mean, I've always been writing. I should have brought it. I have it in the other room. In 4th or 5th grade, we had to write a story and bind it. So we had to kind of write our own book. And I went to a very small school, rural school in Licking County, Ohio. And I'm the only one in my class that still has their copy of their book. And mine is a very badly plagiarized version of Black Beauty called She-Shack the Wild Stallion. So that was my first book, actually. But over the years, I've written a lot of different books, novels, memoirs, different things. And I did try to get a different book about my father and I the last year that we spent together before he died. Which was actually when my mental health issues were diagnosed. That collided. So that was the first book. But so I'm sort of like always writing a book. That's just who I am. But when this happened, when I started running, people started to notice, and I tried to keep it a secret because I was I actually stopped. Hi, I might appreciate this. I stopped weighing myself when I was a size 22. I've been everything from a 0 to a 22. And so I don't know how big I was, but I was much larger than what I am now. And I was so afraid if the neighbors saw me, the neighbors who probably were at work on a Tuesday, saw me running, that they would laugh. And so I took the dog kind of as partner and decoy. She's just exercising the dog. And I went down into this little ravine area where you really can't see from the houses. There's this little tiny stretch. And I tried to jog for 60 seconds. And that's where I started. And what happened was, as I continued, I found this plan that my friend had done. It's called Couch to 5K. And I started with that. And within a few weeks, even though I didn't even tell my husband, and I tell him everything. And in the book, I think he's mentioned like 157 times or something, because he just is he's like my cheerleader. He just is amazing guy. He has his own hashtag. He's the 100% good husband. As I started to change, people started to notice, and they would ask me things like, did you get your hair cut? Or did you get a new therapist? Or, things completely unrelated. And eventually, are you losing weight? And so after a while, I did tell people. And then what happened, which is a kind of a big intersection in the book, is one of the people that died in 2007 was my niece, Jamie, my sister's only child. And obviously that just, rocked our family. But after I made the mistake of telling my sister that I had started running, later in the year, she emailed me and said, oh my goodness, there's a 5K for research for the type of cancer. It was osteosarcoma that she died of. And there's a, steps for sarcoma 5K. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. And my immediate response was, no. I'm a private runner. I don't run in public. I don't run in front of people, And so part of this book, what the story I tell, is kind of getting over myself and realizing that I could own this accomplishment and accomplishments in other areas of my life. So that's kind of the story. That's sort of how it started. And then, like I said before, I really thought I was writing about, a middle-aged woman runs marathon. And by about the, 5th or 6th revision, I realized, no, the issue here is that I was trying to stay alive. And that's when it felt like it really came together. Because for me, that's what has to happen. At some point with the book, it has to kind of gel somehow, and it has to be bigger than me. And I hear that in all of your books, that's, we have our own little story. And then at some point we figure out, how do we take this out into the world? And you guys have done that so beautifully. I'm so inspired. So thanks for listening.
Wow. Yes, I.
May I say something?
Yes.
A couple things. One, thank you, Nita, for sharing about essentially the shame that you were carrying, that you were carrying initially when you got started, because I think that's going to help so many people listening. But you kept going. I love that. I'm a private runner, but then you became okay with it all. I love that. And then in general, I love that all of you guys are showing that, yeah, we use our own books. Like they're so good. They bless us all the time. And so people need to see that. And I love that you said your book started out one way, but it turned into something else. And to your one of your points, Yolanda Bayori says, well, I want to write a book. One of the things you have to understand and own is where you start may not be how it ends, and you have to be okay with that. And you have to be open to allowing that book to evolve, that story to evolve, or whatever it is you're trying to do with that book. So thank you, all of you. I'm also a former English teacher. So all of this stuff just makes me light up. I still have that in my heart. So that's it.
Wow. Paya, that was actually a perfect segue into where I was going next, because I heard a theme from all of you where your book, it started out from your pain or your personal stories, and then it just evolved into, these beautiful works. And while I know that you have written these works to share with other people, Paya brought up that you all are blessed by your own work. So I would like each of you to think of one nugget from your own book that speaks to you. Like one of those things when you read, you're like, ooh, I wrote this? So what is that one thing from your book that speaks to you, even as the author?
I think I'll jump in with A is for accept. It's been this huge word in my life, I think, for years and years. And the one thing that I try to hit home that's in the book is that acceptance does not in any way, shape, or form imply approval of. I can accept that things are happening. And I remember I had a situation where the phrase, "it is what it is," just stuck me in the heart, every single time. So, well, it is what it is. And the longer that I process that, it is. And I have to accept that it is. And I can then choose my steps of how I'm going to respond to it. And January 2020, gave me the perfect opportunity to accept it. And, I had planned and designed, I was going to do an online book club with my book, and we were going to meet on Zoom. And this was, pre-pandemic, and no one signed up. I was like, my shame. No one wants to do my book club with me. And not a week later, waiting for the phone call about a lump, so 2020 just kind of kept on rolling in, it was accept, okay, January, cancer, February, lumpectomy, March, April, radiation, and it was all just this then pandemic. And so whatever it is, I just had to accept it, and it didn't mean I was happy about it or I approved of it or any of it. I just had to make the acceptance and then keep pushing forward.
I like that. I wrote that down. Acceptance does not mean approval of. So that's awesome. Anyone else have? Anita, I think I saw your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. There are actually two parts, and I'm going to read they're real short. So the first one is the first line of the book, which was, that would have been in 2010, but it's still often true. And the line it's the very first line, "My mind was trying to kill me again." And so that happens. It continues to happen. But my response to it is very different now. And then I'm going to read you the last paragraph because that has been the solution for me. And it's from the part that's called conclusion and resources. And I call it the bottom line. Try something, anything, Orange Theory or parkour or yoga with goats, haiku, fables, portrait memoir, Zen, Tibetan, Vipassana. For me, any small action, breaking a sweat, writing a paragraph, sitting for 5 minutes makes a huge difference. I hope it will for you as well. And that's the title. That's been the message. For me, it's been the message I've shared. I consult, I have, writing clients and they're kind of creatives. I teach writing and meditation. And that's always been the message, is to dream big, but find some tiny little thing that I can do, something so small I can't fail. That's kind of my new motto. And when I just see the title of this book, it's like, just get up. And if today all you can do is put on, I can put on my running shoes and jog around the living room, that's a win. I mean, I have to take that as a win. And I think that, the thing that writing this book did was it turned me into an accidental mental health advocate, which, I wanted to be an author. I wasn't sure about the whole accident, but it's been great. I mean, it's kind of sort of a natural progression, and it's allowed me to serve people in ways that I didn't anticipate. So I really liked what Paya said, about not being frozen as to what really anything. It's kind of like what Diana said too, like you get these turns, and Conlee said, where you just have to accept and to not stay frozen into a thing and letting it evolve. And especially with writing, that's been really true with me, because I have a plan. Gosh darn it, don't you know I have a plan? Well, that often goes out the windows.
That's awesome. My mind was trying to kill me again. Diana?
So I just want to read the first passage in my book. My book is just little snippets, and on one page is a cartoon, and then the other is a snippet. And actually the first passage in my book is the last one that I wrote, but I never published this one on Facebook, but it kind of ties it all together. And it's called Star of Your Own Tearjerker Movie. People began arriving at the hospital early on Friday. At one point, the nurse said we were breaking all box office records by the number of fans lined up outside the door. Room 5221 was my theater, and the Hillrom hospital bed my stage. Regardless of the shock and diagnosis and subsequent turmoil in my head, I flashed a confident smile to everyone who came to see me. It was quite the performance, or maybe it was just the drugs. I felt like James Mason's, Chris Christopherson, Bradley Cooper in A Star is Born. I loved being the center of attention, despite not being a very good singer. I knew, however, I was going to have to rewrite the ending. Thus, The Perks of Having Cancer was born.
Wow. Wow.
That was it. That was my it. And I knew I had to do something about it.
I like that. Paya, I'm going to defer to you, and then we actually have a question after you answer this. We have a question from one of the participants.
Okay, so I have in here this piece on diet dumpster mentality versus a lifestyle of wellness. And I'm not going to go into what all a diet dumpster mentality is, except it's why people go up and down on the roller coaster in the first place, because they're stuck over there instead of embracing what they need to embrace as a lifestyle of wellness. And this is not just about, again, physical weight loss, but here's the deal. Diet dumpster mentality is when you have a I have to versus lifestyle of wellness, I want to. Diet dumpster mentality gives into resistance. Lifestyle of wellness pushes through the resistance, which all of you have just explained that. Diet dumpster sees setbacks as final. None of you did that. Lifestyle of wellness, this is why this is such a great panel. Good job, everybody. Views setbacks as temporary and as opportunities So I think I can stop there because you see where I'm going with this. And so this chart is, yeah, I like to, think that I live the lifestyle of wellness on most times, but I'm also human. And if the wrong thing comes into my ear gate or my eye gate, I might find myself on that other side, maybe not necessarily with food or exercise, but with some kind of goal in general. I have to do this. Are you kidding me? I want to do this because I understand what the outcome could be. So yeah, anyway, that's my little, 3.5 cents.
I like that. So we have a question from Deborah G. And she says, I would like to hear about each panelist's journey from having a completed manuscript to finding a publisher. So I know Conlee, you answered her in the chat, but do you mind sharing your answer for others?
I can. It's pretty quick, really. I self-published this book and doled out the money for an editor because that is a key piece of anything. I have a second book in my head, which I would like to be published, not by me. However, in nonfiction, what I wrote was that in order to really be picked up by a publisher in nonfiction, the following that you have on social media is really is super important. And I just don't have that following. I have, 30 people that follow my YouTube and 200 people on Instagram, and those numbers are just too small. So I'm out there trying to build my social media following so that I could take, the next book and market it or shop it around. So I self-published.
Anyone else want to share? Nita, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to have to tell a little bit of a story because I had tried to publish a different memoir with a traditional publisher and had started getting the rejections. And it was before I started running, but I wasn't ready. The book wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And so when I knew that Depression Hates a Moving Target, I just knew that this was a story I wanted to have out in the world. This was a story I really felt proud of and felt like I could would help other people. That I just was getting such positive feedback. So I too hired an editor. Very, very important. And so I contacted a good friend of mine who's a professional, and she's British. And I always tell this, and she cringes. But so I said to her, Tanya, I think I'm going to just self-publish this one. So let's do a real good, real solid structural edit. And then we'll, go into research, because that's what she does. She helps people with that kind of stuff. And she said to me, Nita, if what you wanted was just a book with your name on it, you would have done that years ago. Now, that is nothing against self-publishing. That's not what she was saying. But she was saying, look inside yourself. What will you be happy with? And so we came up with the No Stone Unturned plan. Part A was to try to get an agent. Part B was to try to find a publisher that didn't require an agent. And part C would be to self-publish. And there are some amazing, self-publishing, hybrid, there's all kinds of options, amazing publishers, agents, all that kind of stuff. So we went through that plan. I pitched 108 agents, 132 publishers, and entered 30 contests because I needed, for me, to leave no stone unturned. Now, that's not true of everybody else. A lot of people can't tolerate that, would think it was idiotic, but that's what I needed to do. And if each of those plans, A, B, C, had 100 stops on it, I was at B99 when I found my publisher, Mango. It's a little Mango. And I contacted them And through, the back and forth that happens, I did end up getting picked up. But it was exactly what Conlee said about the platform. I had somewhat of a platform. As I said, I've been publishing an email newsletter for Central Ohio writers since 2003, and I had a decent following, and it wasn't enough. So my editor is amazing. Brenda Knight from Mango she's just phenomenal. I just landed exactly in the right place. And she gave me some titles of books, and she said, it was like August the 3rd, and I would like to take this to the team on the 13th or something like that. So basically I had 10 days. And she said, just see what you can do. And so I contacted everybody I knew. I pulled out the stops. I said, help. I'm going to be on social media 24/7 for the next 10 days. Follow me, retweet everything I said. And we raised my numbers. I think my impressions on Twitter were like 5,000. We raised it to 70,000 in 10 days. But now you can't sustain that. But what it did was it proved to the publisher that I was willing and capable. And also easy to work with, because that's another thing they're looking for. They're looking for somebody they can work with, in addition to the book having to be good. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Conlee. But I'm not sure, did I answer the question? Yeah, I think I did. Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone else, Diana or Paya, would you like to answer the question? Do you need me to repeat it, or?
I self-published as well, and I actually did 2 books, because one is a companion guide, and I did that with a different publisher than the actual main text. And you know what? Since this is my first book these first books that I published, I would say, I think it's just about learning. It was a big, huge learning process, and I don't know if you're going to say anything, Yolanda, about yourself, because, okay, all right. Well, somebody look her up.
Yeah,
but,
look her up.
Look her up. But yeah, I didn't really do a lot of research, and I think that it actually is important. There are questions you should ask, because some publishers won't be ideal for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, for all kind of reasons. And I would say just ask good questions, and even if you're like, well, I don't even know what to ask, maybe we should talk about that another day. But yeah, you need to make sure you're asking good questions, so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you're just stressing to be done, because you just want to be done with the relationship. So does that help?
Thank you. And Diana, did you want to close us out with that question?
Sure. Like most, I self-published. I was fortunate enough. I had a great boss that I used to work for, and she was my initial editor. So then when I found another editor who actually happened to be a neighbor, Peter Bronson, who used to work for the Cincinnati Enquirer, I reached out to him, and then I realized he has his own self-publishing company, and he just lives around the corner. So everything fell into my lap, and Peter was great to work with, gave me a lot of guidance. I'm one of those people that I'm a visual person. I need some hand holding. I'm not a techie. I didn't want to learn all this stuff. And so he kind of walked me through it and made it very, very easy.
Go ahead, Pipe. You're on mute. Okay.
I know, I have to get there. Yes, Diana, yes. Like, if you need to, that's part of what I meant by the questions. You should come to the table like you don't know anything, and make sure they're going to have this list ready for you, exactly what's going to happen first, second, third, fourth, all the way through. The hand holding is really important if you've never gone through this process before. Thank you for saying that, the hand holding, and not anyone who's going to make assumptions about what it's going to take. Because even beyond the manual, you talked about the following, all of that stuff that people consider. I mean, you don't know about this stuff. You're just trying to finish the book. So you need someone who can coach you. Maybe that's what I'm saying. Coach you along with pointing you in the right direction to make sure this is a success.
If I wanted to just add on to what Paya said about the first book being a learning opportunity. Totally. I mean, I have lots of books laying around the house unfinished, you know, and I think that this, for me, this was a great first book, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn to you know, stand up maybe to an editor who was, you know, I don't have to accept all editing changes. And as I read through my book, sometimes I look through it now and I'm like, wow, I really caved. You know, you know, an example, all my pronouns, like I had done everything in they, them. And you know, the standard corrections were he, she. And I was like, oh, well, okay, maybe I should do that. And then after I was done, like I was angry with myself because I had purposefully had all my pronouns inclusive. And so this was just one of those painful learning opportunities where I was like, okay, it's my first book. This was a learning opportunity of me for how to work with an editor, and that I am allowed to say, no, I don't want that edit. So that's so important. And you know what? First book, done, check. I've learned, keep going.
Thank you all for sharing. And I'm checking to make sure we have no other questions from the audience. So I have a question. What do you want readers to take away from your work? Like, what is that overall message that if they don't get anything else from all that labor, they better get this? Diana?
Pick me. Anyways, my book, I think, is for somebody who was just diagnosed with cancer. The fear of the unknowns is far greater than the knowns. And, you know, like you said, Conlee, that will fill up 26 hours in a day, not even 24. Your mind races. And so I think my book, for me, laughter is the best medicine. And so I'd like to put people more at ease and calm their fears so that they can face the battle that's ahead of them.
Thank you.
I'll go. That's just so moving, Diana. These are all, oh my gosh. Didn't expect to come away. So, I mean, I knew I'd be filled, but this is like amazing. So for me, it's kind of what I read before. It's try anything. And I'm not just talking about running, just with anything in life. You know, there are times to sit with something and wait for an answer. But with depression, a lot of times you're kind of like under a rock, and you just have to do something to move the rock. I don't know how else to say it. It's, and so I remember when I first saw my friend running, and she was a year older than me, about the same size as me. And I just had that, if she can do it, I can. And that's what I needed. And it wasn't even about running. It was just like, if she can do something, I can. And so that's the message for me from my book, is just stay on the planet, try one little thing, and you know, don't give up.
Okay, I'll go. Like the title says, you can do this. Wow, I can lose weight. I also want to offer, this book is one, you have to chew on it. You have to take your time, you have to annotate, you just can't read it and then like, you have to interact with it. And you also have to consider the stage of change you're in. Because if you're trying to lose weight and you're at the pre-contemplation, contemplation, and maybe even just the preparation stage of change, you're not going to lose the weight at that time. It doesn't mean you can't get anything from the text, but what I mean by that, if you're at pre-preparation where change is not for you right now, like the urgency is not there, you're going to be, so this is not that book, because this requires you to do some work. And in order for you to take the risk, right, of the unknown, of what that means to do that work, you need to be at the action stage. And there's a little chart that helps you with that. We're not condemning what stage you're at. I just need people, if people could get comfortable with owning where you're at right there, and then proceed accordingly, it reduces the amount of discouragement and disappointment. See, a lot of times we want to lose weight because it's a good idea or because Cousin Sue's doing it. Well, that might not be your goal for this season. So let's just learn what we can. And then when you're at the right stage, you'll take off and you'll be able to do what you need to do. And that's for anything any kind of goal you're trying to achieve. So that's what I would offer about. That's the one takeaway I would like for people to get from this book.
Thank you. Conlee?
I think for me, a lot of it is just being willing to look in the mirror. Life offers me, I view things that annoy me and piss me off as a mirror into my own soul. And while the book is categorized as self-help, I don't use that term because I feel like that's victim blaming. I don't need any help. I'm already great just how I am. However, I can choose to grow. I can choose to be better tomorrow than I was today. So if I can work through one day at a time, like Nita said, zero, as a former math teacher, 0 is 0. But, something is always larger than nothing. So if I can take one tiny step and I can, examine one layer of myself and be like, yeah, you know what? I think I could grow in that area. And these are just the daily little motivations that you read and laugh at or chuckle or make a list. And sometimes I don't want to face it. Sometimes I'm like, this is really getting under my skin and today's not the day and this is not my task. But the next day I'll pick up a new thing and maybe that's where I'm going to grow. So for me, it's, your life is really what helps you move forward, and watching all the grisly bits and all the wonderful bits, they kind of help you take those little baby steps. And so this is about baby steps. They're one day at a time.
Wow. Well, we have 4 questions between the chat and the Q&A, and I'm going to try and address them in order. And to make sure that we can get them all in, I would say for this first question, Krista Powers asked, will you speak to the biggest challenge of writing your book? So maybe if we can just take 30 seconds to a minute just to talk about your biggest challenge. And anyone can go. Yep, go ahead, Diana.
I can start. I'm used to starting. So anyways, writing the book wasn't a challenge at all. Writing has never been a challenge for me. I tend to write when I'm stressed. I wrote when my mother had Alzheimer's. I wrote when my father was living with my husband and I wrote when I had cancer. So it just flows. The biggest challenge was taking that step to get it published.
Okay. And Nita?
Yeah, the biggest challenge for me was that I write long. So the original draft of Depression Eats a Moving Target was 197,000 words. This published book is 78,000. So getting an editor and actually doing what they said, unlike what Conlee said, because the edits that they were giving me were actually helpful. And it wasn't like I would have fought for what Conlee said. I applaud people for learning that lesson, but taking that professional advice and so it's distilled to the essence. You want it to be like the smallest possible, most powerful thing there. That was probably 47 seconds.
That's okay. Paya?
So balancing running a company while finishing up a book, and I would just offer, there's a do not disturb feature on your phone. Put that on so that you're not even disturbed with looking at who comes up and feeling obligated to, now you're spending energy, man, I gotta call this person back. Just cut all of that out, cut all the distractions, put on the do not disturb, put a little pleasant message, inspire them so they won't be disappointed that they didn't get you live. And keep plugging away, stay on target, and be flexible even with that schedule. Because some days when you're writing, you know, you may say Tuesdays and Wednesdays are my writing day, but if the inspiration isn't there, maybe it has to be Friday, and be okay with that. Maybe you just get started and maybe it's just 3 lines. Celebrate the 3 lines, and then let's see what you can do later on in the week. There you go. And
Conlee?
I would have to agree with Paya. For me, it was a balance and learning to make time for that. You know, as I tell my students, you know, life has a habit of getting in the way. And, you know, if you have a full-time job and you're also trying to do these sorts of things and keep your blog up and all this, it's a balancing act, and making time for yourself to do what you really want to do.
Thank you all. Our next question comes from Courtney, and she says, do you have any advice for anyone who is experiencing anxiety due to the pandemic and being stuck at home for all of these months? So if we can just go ahead, we have several more questions popping up too. So this is exciting.
Well, for me, a lot of it's been exercise. I'm going to just jump right in. Exercise, writing, meditation. Those are the big 3 non-medical interventions. And I'll just leave it at that.
Exercise, number 1. Number 2, it's been a gift. I think I've read 17 books since March. I work full time. I typically don't get to read a lot. And the fact that I'm not commuting, I'm saving several hours a week of work on that. So reading, it's a treat. Get a book. I have one.
I would say watch your media intake, because if you're taking in a lot of fear-based messaging, it will wear you out without you realizing it. So really and truly, watch what's coming in here and here. That's what I would offer. Monitor that. Find pleasant things. Stare at a pretty flower all day. I don't know, but watch it.
In addition to all of those, I would just say celebrate your small wins. I've cleaned out areas of the basement to occupy my mind. My mind generates a worst case scenario of just about everything. As I'm walking down the stairs, I get anxiety. What if I fall down the stairs? Because it's happened twice in my life. I know it's ridiculous. So, so you celebrate the small wins. And, you know, I've donated multiple boxes to Goodwill because I've just gone through and I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this. So each little thing. I have also made myself a little like bullet journal where I wrote little habits. These are the habits that I want to develop. And the shame of it is, one of the habits was to not have a glass of wine in the evening. So as I've watched myself progress, like how many check marks where, you know, Conlee did not have a glass of wine, because it's healthier if I don't. I'm just celebrating all my little check marks. That's helping my anxiety level.
Awesome. Well, we have another question from Catherine Powers. Oh, the first one, I'm sorry, was from Krista. This is from Catherine. I don't know if they're related. Catherine says, do you have any recommendations for improving writing? Any favorite books on writing that you can recommend?
I really enjoyed Bird by Bird. I mean, there's like books on writing. If you Google it, the top ones will always come up. And I forget who coined the phrase "shitty first draft," but that was my very big lesson. I just need to. After reading that book, I was like, I gave myself permission to just write the worst crap ever, and it just poured right out, and it was just. And not try to correct as I go. So I handwrite because of that, because when I type, I try to correct as I type. So for me, I think Bird by Bird, and there's maybe the other one that had shitty first draft, and I can't remember, but just gave me permission to like not be perfect. And I really needed that permission.
I want to echo that. Don't evaluate and judge when you're writing, when you're just getting it out there. you will always find something to correct in your stuff. You will so right now, when you just to get started, just to write, get it out there, get the thoughts out there, don't judge, and just realize you're building, it'll be messy. You're gonna put it together and put together this puzzle, but you have to get the thoughts out. And you may not use them for another 5 years. Maybe there's some things you will not come back to until 5 years from now. This is why journaling is awesome. And that's my little tip, just write without judgment.
Yeah, I'll hop in. The book that is not about craft as much as inspiration. She mentioned Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. That's a big one. The book for me is Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. She coined the terms writing practice. And I really believe I wouldn't be still writing all these years later, given all the disappointments, if I didn't have that foundation of writing practice. The other book I'd like to mention, we just came out this year with this writing journal called You Should Be Writing. It's mostly blank pages, but at the top of each page, there's a little author quote, and it's organized in chapters by theme. So there's sort of like one about the sound of language, one about the purpose of your writing, the one about how writing heals you, all these kinds of things, one about craft. And it's just quotes from selected authors, and a place to journal, like people have said, do writing practice, do that shitty first draft. So. But yeah, and there's tons of craft books. There's just so many craft books. Stephen King wrote a great memoir where he talks about his life as a writer, and then he gives craft tips. I could list a ton of them, but that's the two that pop in my head.
Okay. So there is one question. We have 4 minutes left. And there is one question that I think that we really need to get out to the participants. What is the next project you're working on? So if each of you could take a moment to share, and we can close with that, but I don't want to end this panel without telling the guest what it is that you are working on next. So Conlee, would you like to begin? And then we'll go Conlee, Diana, Nita, and Paya.
So sitting on my computer, unfinished and shamefully hiding, is a podcast episode 1 and 2, and a audiobook. I'm trying to put this book into an audiobook format. So I'm working on those, and in the balance of life, trying to get those out into the world. And that way, if I can get this out, then I can maybe build my following and blah, blah, blah.
And Diana?
That was my cat that just walked by. That was not a large rat that you saw. Just wanted to clear that up. But anyways, when you self-publish a book, you also self-market your book. So that's what my big project has been ever since my book came out in December, is basically marketing. Writing for me is a second job. It's a sideline. I work full-time for the Alzheimer's Association, so that takes up a good chunk of my time. But I think what I'll finally do is go back and publish one of the children's books that I wrote. One that I have that's really kind of close to my heart that I love is called The Vampires Next Door. And hopefully that'll come out some Halloween.
Awesome.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Yeah, so it's kind of up to my editor at this point as to which project I do next. I have a book of daily meditations about living in the moment. It's one of those 365-day that I've really been working on for almost 20 years. And I just, I finally have a nice draft of it. And so we have to figure out if this is the right time to do that. I have a book about, the Enneagram and writers, and then kind of a memoir about my story as a writer, because it's been quite a journey over, 20 some years trying to finally get a book published after I've written so many in the drawer. But yeah, and like Diana said, the book marketing is really my full-time job. I mean, no joke. Even with when you're traditionally published, you still have to do the marketing. They do a lot, Mango is lovely. I love them. I adore them. But they have to do a lot. So.
And then Paya.
Okay, so we will be releasing in 2 weeks, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, 2 online master courses, which is nice because it's the extended version, the detailed version of what's in the book. So this is the intro. The master course is where you get the detailed instruction, and they're self-paced. And it's called the Wow Factor Mind, Dare to Look and Feel Amazing. And the other one is the Wow Factor Mind is Power Over Hurdles, Achieve Your Goals. Wow Factor Weight Loss Experience is the Dare to Look and Feel Amazing. One is about like I said, the mind, peak performance, and the other is literally about the nutrition and the other things that go with losing the physical weight. So 2 master courses to handle the introduction of what you get in that book, or to give more understanding. So 2 weeks or less if everybody does what they're supposed to do and there's no distractions.
Well, I want to just say how much I have enjoyed listening to you all. It has been an honor to moderate this panel. Unfortunately, our time is up. And I think I would like to end with a quote by Krista Powers. Krista says, "Bravo, bravo, you important and powerful women. Thank you for sharing yourselves. I am deeply moved." So I think that just sums up our time together. Thank you all. Such a wonderful job. And thank you, audience. Hopefully you will go out and find these beautiful ladies and learn much more about them. Have a great day,
Thank you,
everyone.
Yolanda.
Thank you, Yolanda. It was an honor to be a part of this whole thing.
It really was. Thank you. Thanks, Yolanda.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Great. And thanks to the audience for the great questions, and the other panelists. Oh my gosh. Thank you. You just filled my heart. Can't even say. Thank you.
Ditto.